Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man whose self-control is so dialed in, his emotions have to schedule appointments to speak. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, the human weapon of obedience and purpose.
I didn't hear the joke.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it's I am the punchline has spoken. It's coming. Hey, man, so I feel like I'm always excited about our podcast, but this is like a milestone. We've been at this for 213 episodes. This is number 214, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. And we have our first ever paid sponsor, which I'm like for those of you that have been with us since the beginning, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you'll understand, like, you've never had to listen to any ads except for stuff that Garrett and I were doing. And you will now have noticed when this thing started that you heard about ID Life, which is incredible for us.
We don't take that lightly. As my man Ron Swanson would say, son, my recommendation is essentially a guarantee.
Yeah, well, but on a serious note, so this is the first time we've had a paid sponsorship, and I would say that it's worked out really well for them because they already have a bunch of our money because we've been using their products for a long time. This is one of those ones where it's like
you could buy a car with the amount of product that I've consumed from that company
Garrett
over the last 10 years.
Garrett is the Willy Wonka of ID Life. When you come over to his house, like, you go into his pantry and it's like, you know how some people have a lot of Jordans?
I take every single one of their products except for one of their female-oriented products, which my wife takes.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm glad. There you go. And I also take a lot. I was looking at my regimen the other day and I was like, I have an energy, I have BioAge, I have Hydrate, then I have a Recover after my workout, then I hit the protein, like literally all these things. So ID Life.
Dream scenario.
Yeah, dream scenario. Why don't we get ID Life to be our first ever paid sponsorship? Because, you know, it makes a lot of sense. And so we're just pumped because it's like, it's such a natural partnership. I was telling them the story whenever we were having the discussions that when I was feeling probably about as bad as I've ever felt, when I felt like I was hungover and I had COVID, aka I had altitude sickness, your help to me was that you threw a Hydrate packet in my eye on purpose. If you remember,
not my fault. You were too unwitting to,
You literally handed one to the man next to me. You slapped me in the eye with mine and gave one to Chris Hudson and said, here you go, because you were trying to help us out because we both felt so bad we needed hydration.
Well, see you later.
Yeah, okay. Well, I said my bad. Anyways, the point is, we're pumped. I'm actually going to make an energy live on air here because I think it's amazing. So if you watch this on YouTube, got my little packet of energy. I got a standard water. I'm going to rip this thing open because it has... Now, is it nootropics or nootropics?
It's nootropics. One of the things I love about ID Life products is the tear of their packets.
Yeah.
It's like, how much little stuff bothers me sometimes. And it is very annoying, if you try other products for, pour in water pouch things that you try to tear it and it won't tear. Like there's too much, the plastic's too hard, or like it just won't. Like the ID Life stuff is a clean tear. I like that.
I agree. Yeah, on top of just being clean with everything because they're like the top quality premium stuff. Anyways, point is, for those of you that have been with us for a long time, we're excited because this is something that we actually believe in. It's not the first time we've had someone approach us for sponsorship. We've actually had a number of companies.
We've had quite a few.
I remember Garrett's exact line. There was a skincare company that I can't remember the name of, and he was like, our mission is not to sell skincare. And I was like, okay. And I went back and did not say that to the guy, but I did tell him, we don't think it's a good match.
Respectfully, no thank you.
Yeah, respectfully, no thank you.
But we are excited to rep ID Life.
We really are because we already were repping them. And so it's a great partnership. It's a company we believe in. The products are amazing. We both use them all the time. Click the link down below. We're going to put it in there permanently, not just for the ad. So anybody who listens to this for all of time, you will know we stand by these products. We believe in them, and we're going to be using them. So
my recommendation's a guarantee.
And there you go. Garrett has spoken. All right. So today's episode is an episode that everybody wants to listen to, G. It's probably going to be our most listened to ever. 3 deaths, we all die. Well, you know what? We need to think of like a James Bond version of this, of like, die for tomorrow or something.
If you're new to this podcast, you might have looked at this title and thought twice before playing it.
Yeah. Hey, don't you guys have anything on how to get rich? Don't worry. That's no, we don't. But you can get that elsewhere. All right. So, G, we're talking about death. No one likes to know this. Have you ever heard of Lazarus syndrome?
No.
I'm sure you can guess by the name. So Lazarus syndrome is also known as auto-resuscitation after failed cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
That's about what I would have guessed. I mean, Lazarus is pretty...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Narrows
it gives it away.
down.
Right. For those of us who don't speak doctorese, what it means is that if you are... Basically, these people will die and go...
I do love that there's a medical syndrome named after a Bible character.
Yeah, take that, science. But yeah, so they basically what happens is you die and they pronounce you dead, and then for reasons that I don't really know if they haven't really said why. I didn't read deeply into it. you come back to life. So like
reasons other than medical malpractice.
Right. Well, yeah, for sure. So like, listen to this. A 27-year-old man in the UK collapsed after overdosing on heroin and cocaine.
Oh, wow.
Paramedics gave him a naloxone injection, and he recovered enough to walk to the ambulance. Solid. He went into cardiac arrest in transit, and after 25 minutes of resuscitation, they called it. A minute after resuscitation, a nurse noticed the rhythm on the heart monitor, and resuscitation was resumed. He recovered fully.
Honey Badger. That's my guy.
I mean, do you want a honey badger, cocaine, and heroin, G? Probably not. I mean, I'm gonna
maybe other products.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to question that one.
Lindsay always gets mad at me. She's like, you get sick or, you don't feel, you just like take a nap and then wake up and you're fine. It's honey badger.
Yeah, I've witnessed that. It is kind of remarkable. Anyways, another one, very interesting. A 66-year-old man had a suspected abdominal aneurysm and suffered cardiac arrest and received chest compressions and defibrillator shocks for 17 minutes.
Gosh.
Vital signs never came back, so he's dead. Right? 10 minutes later.
Resuscitate myself.
Clearly. 10 minutes
Y'all
later.
a bunch of quitters.
10 minutes later, he did exactly what you said. They felt the pulse. The aneurysm was successfully treated. And check this out. He fully recovered with no lasting physical or neurological problems.
You know what I love about that, which it's like about this story and this syndrome, is just to show that it's called medical practice.
Yes.
Like we sort of understand.
Right.
It's kind of like in movies where like we get alien technology and they're like, well, we know how to use it, but we don't really know how it works.
Right.
It's exactly how the human body is. It's like, well, we know a lot of stuff,
right,
but we don't know everything. And sometimes there's stuff we're like, I didn't know it could do that.
Yeah, we can pull the trigger on the photon blaster, but we don't know how the photon blaster created the blast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is wild. I just think that's crazy though that someone could be dead for, at that point, 27 minutes. Like, and the longest the human brain can go without oxygen is 6 minutes, I think it is, or something like that. And then they're like, yeah, you're definitely gonna have brain damage. Nope. Our 66-year-old man's like, I'm good.
Take that, science.
Yeah, exactly. I will take you up on that.
The power of determination.
Well, we're not talking about actually.
God had a plan for that man's life.
Indeed, he did, G. And he has a plan for everyone's life if there's breath in your lungs. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
He still had a purpose, even though there wasn't breath in his lungs.
Yeah, exactly. That's a double whammy. Extreme purpose. But most people, like, if you look at fears, like I looked at top fears, and dude, there's some wild, like, you got arachnophobia. Okay, we know that one. Ophidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes. Acrophobia, fear of heights. Glossophobia, fear of public speaking. They're giving all sorts of names to these things, man. Aerophobia, the fear of flying. Astrophobia, the fear of thunder and lightning. If you're afraid of death, yeah, we just call that.
A lot of people's dogs have that.
A fear of thunder and lightning, yeah, for sure. But they have all these names. But I think so many people, they're afraid of death, right? So for us to be like, hey, and the way that the Bible talks about death, like consider yourself dead to sin, dead to your flesh. It's a really kind of aggressive term to use, and you know, you've actually faced death. We were talking about this before the podcast, that you've had a moment in your life that I don't know that many people have had, where you not only thought you were going to die, you expected to die. Yeah, I've never come anywhere close to that.
I was sure,
right.
For every single person that was on that helicopter, like there was a moment where, you know, when your helicopter's getting shredded with bullets, you're just waiting for the next one to hit you. It's a very helpless feeling, and it's kind of a surreal feeling of like, okay, I'm just waiting. You know, you've been through. It's not because of the training that we've been through. Like your heart's not racing, but like you just realize like, oh man, I lost the game.
Yeah.
Right. Like you've prepared for so many of these moments. You've been in these stressful situations and you're like, oh, I missed the shot. And that's kind of what it felt like in the moment. Like, oh, it's over. Like I died. That I was waiting to die and then I didn't.
Yeah. Because today we're talking about 3 deaths, and these are 3 deaths we all die, and we have to die them many times. And this came from, we touched on this last week, but it really came from that thought process that you shared about how when you get to death, how you hope it's the final evolution of death. Like, okay, this is the last one, because you've died to yourself so many times. And
well, it's kind of a thought that comes from, it's both a spiritual thought, and it's and we're going to jump into some of the scripture around it, and it's also the Tecumseh's poem that I've read before. Mm-hmm. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home.
Yeah.
Right. And this is really, having been exposed to death and been around it, what I've realized is that many people do fear death,
right,
because they lived improperly.
Yeah.
And Tecumseh's poem, he talks about that. Like, you should live a certain way that you die like a hero going home, mm-hmm, right? Like this was meant to be. This was supposed to happen. If you live improperly, you will be afraid of death.
Yeah, yeah. And when you said that, you said it at Mighty Men. I think, I have a pretty good mental highlighter for when you speak. Like, you'll say things and I'm like, oh, that's good. And I thought about it every day for a week, and I've thought about it since then as well. Mm-hmm. But it was that first week afterwards that it really, I was just really thinking about that because I was like, I get that. Like, I really identify with that. So the 3 deaths that
just as a reminder for those who didn't hear it, what I was saying was I was talking about like the many of the deaths, and it's what we're going to talk about today on the show. Many of the deaths that we'll go through in life, and the right way to live is that when you get to the end of your life, you're looking at what most people consider death, where your body dies, like your brain dies, your life here on earth ends. That's what most people consider death. And what I was saying was that you have been through so many deaths already that when you come to that last one, you're ready for it, right? I've had all the other deaths. I've been through every other process. Otherwise, it's like, well, I didn't go to spring training camp. I didn't play with the team, but they're throwing me into the game. Of course, you're going to feel like you're not ready.
Right.
What God put us here on this earth for preparation, for us to grow, for us to mature, for us to develop as sons and daughters. And if you didn't go get the proper training, when it's time for it to be over, you're going to be afraid.
Yeah.
But if you've done everything that God has commanded you to do, and if you've been through every single one of these deaths, you'll look at the last one and you'll almost be excited for it.
Yeah.
And that should just be like, many people live their entire lives afraid of death. Do I want to die right now? No. I'm also not afraid of death because I don't feel like it's my time to die.
Right.
I feel like God has me. And when my grandpa, my dad's dad, when he died young, and he had an aneurysm and he was healthy. But in his last year before he died, he kept telling people it was his time. It's like my grandpa got saved later in life and then was like extremely hard after God, had a big impact on prison ministry. I have his journals from he journaled every single day, like to the Lord, not like his personal thoughts. Like he wrote in his the book that I love to read, the devotional I love was his devotional, My Utmost for His Highest. But anyways, I said it to say, like, he knew at the end of his life, like for whatever reason, just felt like it was his time. And Paul talks about this. Paul talks about in Scripture how, like, I would rather be with you, but I know my time's not up.
Yeah.
Right? My time's coming, but I know it's not up. And you'll take me when it's my time. And when you live following after God and you're willing to go through these deaths, when you come to the final one, you won't be afraid of it. You'll be excited about it.
Yeah. And I love that thought process because, like you said, so many people are afraid of death. When I was not serving the Lord, one of the quotes that I loved about it was from a writer named Hunter S. Thompson, and he said, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride!'"
Yeah, the purpose of your life is not to preserve it, but to spend it.
Exactly. And so with that in mind, we're going to talk about the 3 deaths that you will die repeatedly in this life, as what Garrett referred to in those evolutions. One quick note to know beforehand, though, the good news is we serve a wonderful God who was the first fruits of all of us. And guess what? When Jesus died, he didn't just stay there. I was talking to my son about this, about resurrection, and he was like, yeah, he loves it. So every death has a resurrection. And it's, in the spirit is where you'll experience a lot of these things, that as you die to different things, you experience this life in God, in your spirit, that it's thriving and satisfactory and fulfilling beyond imagination.
Yeah, just like it says in Ezekiel 36, I'll take out your heart of stone and give you a new heart. Yeah. Each of these deaths is an exchange. It's a choice that you have to make to give something up, to release something in yourself, but God puts something else back.
Yeah. And so it's going to be a little bit of a different episode because we're not, the 3 deaths are flesh, thinking, and heart. And we're going to give you lots, like we said, it's only 3? Yeah, but you're going to die them many times.
Yeah, there's many deaths. It's not just 3 deaths, right? There's 3, I would say, categories of death. But you'll go through many deaths in your life, and through this sanctification process, through this transformation process, as God grows you into who he wants you to be. The reason God doesn't show you all of them is because if he laid out the plan for you of like, here's all the deaths you're going to go through, you'd quit. Yeah. Right? You'd say, there's no way I'm doing that.
100%.
God says, look, it's okay. Like, let's just do today.
Yeah.
Let me just help you today.
Exactly.
Why don't you just focus on today?
Well, let's start with, so we're going to be getting into these. So let's start with flesh, G. I think the first one,
At the beginning of flesh, I want to share this scripture.
Okay.
This is Psalms chapter 19, verse 12 and 13. David speaking, he says, "How can I know all the sins lurking in my heart? Cleanse me from these hidden faults. Keep your servant from deliberate sins. Don't let them control me. Then I will be free of guilt and innocent of great sin." And I say this to say, like, there's so much sin in us, which is like, that's not me saying, "Oh, it's so bad. We're all so terrible." It's not a judgment thought. What it really means is that there's a lot of layers in us, and there's stuff that today I would say is a sin for me in my life, where years ago it's like I just wasn't at a place of maturity and conviction with God. Like what I was doing then wasn't a sin, but today it would be,
right?
Because God has brought me to a different place, and in different seasons and in different layers of your life. Like God's not trying to, have you go through 137 deaths at one time. It's like, let's just do what we got to do right now, and you go to the next level, you go to the next layer, and God continues to pull things out of us and put new things in us. And that's why did God give us this entire life? If the whole purpose of this life was just to get saved, we've talked about this before. We'd just be like, well, you prayed your prayer and you just rapid slingshot up to heaven. And whether you get saved at 7 years old or you get saved at 77 years old, you're going to go through a process in your life where you've got to die to certain things.
Yeah. And what I want to give you the encouragement on, God is so good. Like in everything that we do and we walk out in this earth, the whole point is that we're to know God more, that he wants us to be his people in the earth, and he wants us to know him. That was why God came down and made the covenant with the Israelites, is that he would have a people in the earth who can show others, be his priest, literally, to know God and then help other people to know who he is. And so part of that is understanding that as you're walking through these things, God's not some taskmaster that's just up there like whipping you like, well, it's time to die. Like, because if he, like to Garrett's point, if he was like, here's all the deaths, do them at once, we would all just be done. So I find that in the goodness of God, he's going to start you with the ones that are appropriate for where you're at. I used this example the other week in Mighty Men where I was talking about my son, and I have to remember that I'm looking at things through 5-year-old eyes when I'm dealing with him. And so there's certain lessons that like we don't talk about right now because he's just not even at a place to receive it. And that's how God deals with us. It's like, here's what you need in the moment. So like a lot of times, our first death is in our flesh because those are the simplest ones for us to understand. And it's the first place that we start to grasp, oh, okay, this is what it means to like put God's ways first and foremost, and to deny my own ways. So part of that is like with your impulses and your cravings. So many people, I mean, this could be from lust, it could be from food, it could be, whatever that you're craving, social media, like addictions, things like that. As you learn to deny those things, and in America, let's be honest, we have a problem with denying food.
And the reason we're talking about all these, we're going to mention a bunch of them. We're not going to go like, the goal is not to list every single one, but to list a lot of them so that when whichever death you're facing, one of these things today that we talk about, you might be like, oh, that sounds terrible. That's probably the one that you're in right now.
Right.
Right. And when whether you've been through it, you're in it right now, you haven't been through it or it's in your past, this one that Nick is talking about specifically of impulses, craving, lust, this is one, like, when you're in it, it feels like, man, how could I ever get past this?
Yeah. I remember when I was in my early 20s, and I was serving God at this point, and so I was not masturbating. And I remember I was at the gym, and I was talking with this dude who was like, and he ended up coming to church with me, and he was like, how is that possible? Like, it was not even a possibility that you could give up, like, you could deny yourself to that point. And I was like, dude, it's hard at the beginning, like, especially at the beginning, but I just kept trusting in God and I kept handing it over to him. And like anything, that's the joy of a craving. If you starve it, it dies. Yeah. And that's how you need to start recognizing things.
Well, and it's also the understanding of what a death is.
Yes, very good.
A death is not a death. We're not curing a disease. A death is a total change. Right. God says there's the death, then there's the resurrection.
Yeah.
And so to allow a part of yourself really to be killed, I can say I feel like I've been through this in my life, but that also doesn't mean that I'm not still tempted. But you go through this process of like, you see what God can do in you when you're willing to let go of something. Because what I would just, if you're asking today, listening to this, like, man, how do I actually do that? That's like, you get on your knees before God and say, God, like, I'm giving this up.
Yeah.
I like, and it's really a test of, this is the heart thing. Like, you can say in your mind that you want to get rid of it, but in your heart, you hope that you still get the opportunity to partake of this thing again.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really the difficult part. And that's where you can even say to God, like, God, we've talked about this before, the heart on the podcast. Go back to the heart episode where you can say, God, like, this is in my heart. This is a desire that I know is there, that I don't want to be there. God, cut this out of me. I don't want this to be with me anymore. And that God will meet you right where you're at in that.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we have, it doesn't say you take out your heart of stone. God says, I'll take out your heart of stone.
Yeah, that's so good. And I just want to highlight for some people, if you ever have something that comes on as like an urge or a craving, chances are that's your flesh. Like I remember the first time someone pointed that out to me about food, they're like, oh, you know how you get like cravings and urges for sweet things. It's not like you suddenly kind of go, I think some sweet stuff would be good right now. It's very sudden. So if you can ride the wave out, guess what? It disappears as fast as it comes. So that's the encouragement.
And if I could just encourage the men for a second, men are really prone to this one thing where sometimes we'll just get really focused on our work.
Yeah.
And like you won't eat.
Right.
It's like, oh, forgot to eat. You can also forget about lust when you're focused on the right things in your life.
Yeah.
Right. You'll find yourself in a place of lust when you're not busy.
Very good.
Right.
G.
And not busy like, oh, I'm just making sure I got stuff to do all the time. But when you're not focused on the things that God has for you. The reason I forget to eat lunch sometimes or just don't have time for it and don't care and I'm not even hungry is because the work that I'm on is so much more important than filling myself with food.
Yeah.
Right. And you can the same thing applies that you can be so focused on the work that God has for you. I don't have time for these other cravings.
Very good. Yeah, and then next up, like we said, we're not going to be exhaustive, but some of these are we hope, blind spot revealers.
These are all, we're still just talking about the flesh,
about
and
the
these
flesh.
are examples of flesh deaths.
Yeah, and this is one that we've all had to feel is comfort, right? I mean, just that need to kind of, well, I don't want to push in past, there's like a certain range where this is like my happy place. I'm good here. Let's just stay in that zone. Well, what does that look like? It's everything from your physical exercise down to the way that you use your time, the things that you're willing to commit yourself to, like where you're willing to go with other people in relationships. Like, you know what? That's kind of a pain. I'm not going to do that.
This isn't a one-time thing.
No.
Right? For many people, like the first time they go and run their first 5K. Right? Maybe you've been out of shape, like running's hard for you, scary for you. I was just listening to this story the other day about a girl who's in a few years became one of the top ultra marathoners in the world, and her coach was talking about how she was throwing up and almost quit her first 5K because she was scared that she wouldn't be able to finish.
Wow.
And in a few years, she's one of the best ultra runners in the world.
How's that?
Right? And so she had to die to that first level of discomfort, but there's many levels that go on beyond that. And so this isn't like ran a 5K, I've killed that beast.
Right.
Right? Like we're going to go through many layers of this. Temptation is the same. Many of in your flesh, you're going to go through many deaths. You just got to get used to letting this thing die and putting it on the altar.
Yeah, and pain is like that as well. For a lot of people, like pain is an absolute master that as soon as it starts to hurt, it's like, oh, we're going to stop doing this. But learning to die, to allowing pain to control you, I think the biggest place where people see this is, physical pain, a lot of people will pull back from that, and it's understandable. But in the world we live in, at least in the Western world, you don't have to deal with physical pain as much. It's the emotional pain where I see people run all the time. They haven't died to be able to sit there and be like, you know what? I'm hurting right now, and I'm going to go ahead and just sit with this, and I'm going to press into it. I'm not just going to try and do anything to make it go away. And I remember one of the first things you said before we were even friends, when I had first come out here from California, you said it at Mighty Men at our camping trip. You said, I don't ever want to be the kind of person that like has to, you're like, I enjoy the Four Seasons, but I also never want to
enjoy the Ritz.
Okay. Sorry. There. Yeah, the Ritz.
I put Ritz as just like one notch. Maybe it's my preference, but I put Ritz like one notch above the Four Seasons. Please continue.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry I got it wrong. But you said I enjoy the Ritz, but I also want to be just as happy sleeping underneath the stars in a sleeping bag.
I sleep on the ground.
There you go.
Done that too.
Right. But I remember when you said that, you're like, I want to be a guy that can enjoy comfort but doesn't need it. And I remember the first time you said that, I was like, I like that, because I've always felt like it was such a weak thing when you hear people just be like, I need this bed, or I need to eat now, or else I'm not going to be any good.
Their idea of camping is sleeping in a hotel.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go down that route. But like, I remember when you said that, it just stood out to me, because I think there's that's what I mean when I say like a death there. When you don't need those things.
Like the way I've said it to you is I want to be a man of low needs.
There you go.
Because needs are obstacles to purpose.
Right.
Like, well, God, I'll follow you. I'll go on that mission. I'll do this, or this, as long as I have this list of things. Right? Like my list is really short.
Yeah.
My list is air in my lungs, a level of hydration that my body doesn't die. That's my real short list. Go for a long time without food. I'm not saying that to be a tough guy. I'm saying that because like I've decided I'm going to have a low list of needs. Now, would I like to be able to eat a meal every day? Yes, I would like that. I don't require it.
Right. And I love that. You know who else agreed with that, G, is our man, the Apostle Paul.
Exactly.
Philippians 4:11 through 13. This is the one that everyone quotes for sports. Like, I can dunk a basketball because of Philippians 4:13. It's not what he was saying. This is him. This is Paul in Philippians 4:11. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Low needs. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do this through him who gives me strength. And that I love what he's saying is that Jesus is all. Like that's where he draws his strength from Christ, not from his external circumstances.
Between that and Rudyard Kipling's if you can walk with kings and not lose the common touch, I think it's such a great quality for a man to have.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, this is one that I think some people might be like, hey, that's a little bit harsh, but I am speaking from experience here. Tiredness and fatigue is a death that you need to die to. And what I mean is, you can't be the person that if you don't get a good night's sleep, the whole world feels your wrath.
Yeah.
Now, I get it. You need sleep. What I'm not saying is like, chug a bunch of ID energy and never sleep. What ID Life energy and never sleep. What I am saying is you should, we're all going to have bad night sleeps. There's going to be times when what's required of you is to not get as much sleep. And you need to still be able to show up, keep your equanimity, keep yourself together, and be able to love and serve the people that God's entrusted you with and ask the question, what's required of me?
It's kind of like, I've told this story before, I believe on the podcast. I've definitely told it at Mighty Men, of the guy who I went through a pool comp with, that he was underwater for over 3 minutes when they pulled his mouthpiece out on an exhale.
Yeah.
And we just watched him suffer and suffer and suffer until he just passed out. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Like a lot of guys will they fight differently. And they're panicking as they pass out. I've watched many men drown underwater. Most guys don't do it the way that this guy did. Just like you could see it on his face. He was just calmly working through his process for over 3 minutes, right up until the point where his body's just like, well, we're 0% on O2. That's it.
Yeah.
I just watched him slowly pass out. And I tell that story when I do my keynote on Foundations of an Unstoppable Team and talk about equanimity, how awfully hard it is to do what he did, but it's very simple to just choose to stay in the game. And I say that about tiredness or hunger or whatever it is. This should be your ideal self, who you want to become. That I could be someone that my level of tiredness would never impact the way that I treat people, the choices that I make, the emotions that I have. I could just go on no sleep until literally my body just said boop and I just passed out. Right.
Yeah.
That's dying to yourself, and that's what you're wanting to get to on the other side of this death, where your body is not dictating to you who you are.
Right.
Because otherwise you're saying, well, I'm in charge as long as I'm well rested, I'm in charge. As long as my bank account's above a certain level, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
As long as you've not said anything that upsets me, I'm in charge.
Right.
But if one of these triggers occurs, now my flesh is in charge, and who God's made me to be has taken a backseat.
Really think about that, man, because where you've been a blessing for me, G, is in a lot of ways, but you gave me such a new level set for the ability to go without sleep. Now, have we had a sleep expert on this podcast? Yes. Have you and I talked about getting sleep regularly? Yes.
Should you seek to test yourself in this area?
No. God
it ages you. That's why Nick reminded me that my Whoop age needs some work.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I mean, and we're big on Whoops for that exact reason, because it helps us know where we're at as far as rest.
I want to take good care of my temple. I'm no longer on the physical battlefield anymore. I don't need to go days without sleep.
But here's the thing: are there days? I looked at your Whoop. You and I were comparing Whoop data because we've both had some days of shorter night sleep.
It's been a week.
Yeah, we've had some shorter nights sleep recently. But you know what that doesn't mean? It doesn't mean I get to turn up and have a pass. Like, hey kids, Daddy's just going to be grumpy today and not going to be there for you because I didn't get my sleep.
I love what Jesse Eatsler says. I'm never too tired for my kids.
Yeah, I mean what? But
even after I ran a 50 miler, I'm never too tired for my kids.
I know, and that is a big statement. I love that as well. But where I was talking about you being a level set, I think for a lot of people they wouldn't even really think that this was possible. And that's the first thing is you have to believe you can be tired and still perform at an excellent level and do everything that's required of you. I'll encourage you to look at Philippians 4:6 everything through petition and prayer. Cast your cares on the Lord, and the peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and mind. When you actually believe that and you give things over because your source is God, you can be tired and not stressed. You can be tired and not be short-tempered. You can be tired and feel this unbelievable peace. I had it happen to me recently where I had a day that was just blowed up on all sorts of levels. I'm not going to tell the full story. And I've just been in this habit of just prayerfully giving everything to God throughout the day. Like my work is worship. Everything I do, I'm just I'm in communion with God. And I remember that day, it felt like something supernatural was on me. Like I couldn't explain it. I was like, man, I am so calm. Like I was aware of how calm I was. And there was this grace of God. I worked till 9:45 that night, had all the kids on my own. I had a sick wife. I mean, it was just there was a bunch of things. I had really important things going on at work, and everything was absolutely nailed. And I remember I felt like the Holy Spirit just said, That's Philippians 4:6.
It's what grace feels like.
Yes.
Where it really is such a great picture of grace that it's like, this was more than I could handle, but
yeah.
it was exactly what I could handle.
Right. Yeah. And to know in the moment. Yeah.
It's the same. It's just like the way that God supplies manna. How much food did God give you? Only enough for today.
Right.
And it's like, man, like we're going to die out here in the desert. Like we need to make sure we bring a year's supply of food, and let's bring cattle out here.
Yeah.
And let's bring, instruments and seeds so that we can plant a field and we don't starve. God says, no, I'll just give you this, right? Just one bite. This is all you need for right now.
Yeah.
And in your situation, it's like, man, there's no way I can handle this, but I'm handling it in this moment.
Yeah, and gave them the exact measure. Yeah. Like that's what I love about how detailed God is.
That's grace.
Yeah, he was the first dietitian. He was like, here's what you need to eat for the day. Like, go do it. All right. So that, like we said, we're not going to be exhaustive. That was flesh. The tiredness, fatigue one, I think, is a real. I hope that's an eye opener for people, because I think a lot of people they've already given into that in advance, because they're like, oh, if I don't get my 8 hours, I'm a wreck.
And these are just some of the flesh deaths. Again, the whole point of this podcast is I hope that you would listen to today's episode and that you're going to walk away. Maybe one of these deaths that we talk about sticks out for you, and that it'll help you to zoom out on your life, and you're going to look at what you're going through and say, this is exactly where God wants me to be. Yeah. This is a death that I have to walk through, one of many deaths that God's going to allow me to go through to grow me, to transform me, help me to be a better son, help me to be a better daughter, so that one day when I get to the end of my life, before I face the last death, I can know that on the other side of it, I'm going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah, man, I love that. You've said something like that before, and it always gets me going, man. So let's go to the thinking deaths, G. And the first one we had up is emotions. And I just did a short cast on my own where I talked a lot about how to use your emotions as indicators to get to the root of your problems. It's worth listening to. But I think for what this looks like in practical sense, a lot of people will say things like, but I just feel. And whatever follows after that, if your emotions are king and they're ruling you, like if you have to feel a certain way before you can do what you know is right, or if you have like I need to be heard, or I need to have this understanding before I could actually do what I know is the right thing to do, you're missing it. Like you have to be able to die and know that you can operate the way you need to, even if it's not what your emotions feel good about. I have a saying in my family that honor's not honor until it's hard. AKA, I disagree with this person that I have decided to honor, and I think what they're doing is absolutely stupid. And you know what? I'm not going to say a thing about it. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to honor them. I'm going to follow their leadership, and I'm going to do this because I know it's the right thing to do. And it doesn't feel good. It feels awful.
There's a scale that's really interesting, if you can picture this with me, from like subjective statements to objective statements. And if you're, having a conversation with somebody, you're trying to communicate a point, influence somebody, and you say, I feel like this, it's a very subjective point, right? Like this is, well, you feel that way. I don't feel that way.
Right.
Like this is something you're experiencing. And even when you make the statement of I feel, it's almost like you're repeating something that somebody said to you.
Right.
Right. Like but really it's your emotions.
Yeah.
Your emotions transmitted a signal to you, and you're trying to re-communicate that to somebody else. Moving up the subjective to objective scale, think about this. The next time you're about to say, I feel like, hopefully you can catch yourself, pause your tongue, and say, well, no, not that I feel like, I think. And if you can say, I think this, then you can at least say, like, there are logical, reasonable thoughts that I've had that I can share with you that back up my point. Mm-hmm. And then moving all the way up the objective scale is being able to say, like, well, I have seen this. Mm-hmm. It's been demonstrated to me this, right? Like, this is what I've witnessed. And more than just like a thought, like I came to this conclusion, you're saying objective is like, hey, there's data. This is what I saw you do. This is what I remember that you said. Very different from, I have feelings to I have thoughts. Yeah. And so just catch yourself the next time you're about to, try to influence or share a point and say, like, I felt. The feelings are only yours. Right.
And that's a more mature view. I think at a very like immature, simplistic view is you can't control your anger, or you can't control, when you're sad, or all these, like when you feel a certain way, it's like,
it's so often I hear guys asking me like, man, I lose my temper a lot.
Yeah. They experience their emotions like the weather.
Yeah.
Just can't control it, man.
I really want to be a good dad, but I lose my temper a lot.
Yeah.
Well, why?
Yeah.
Right? You've got to realize that that's a choice that you get to make. You're just getting some really strong signals that you feel like you have to respond to. You don't, right? You know what? When you're really hungry, it's hard to have a good attitude, but you don't have to have a bad attitude.
Right.
You can choose to. When you're tired, it's really easy to be grouchy. I was sharing this with somebody the other day. you won't hear me be negative, right? But sometimes you'll hear me be silent.
Right.
And if I'm being silent, that's the power. I don't have the power to always say positive things. I'm not capable of that. But I do have the power to silence my tongue.
Yeah.
And that's what Scripture has said that we have. Like, I can shut myself up if I have to. And if you ever see me, like, you're talking to me and I got nothing to say back, it's because what you're saying is really frustrating to me, and I don't have anything good to say, so I'm just not going to say anything.
Yeah, for real. We could go on about emotions for a while. We've done episodes on that. The next one up that we talked about was preferences. And preferences show up in so many areas. You know who you don't want to be around with if you think about the people you want to spend time with? Somebody that always has to have things their way.
Yeah.
No one enjoys that person.
You know who has a lot of preferences?
Little kids. 100%. That's exactly who I was thinking of. And what is that? That's immaturity.
It's immaturity.
Yeah. But so
I love my daughter. We play this, like, she'll show me 2 or 3 things and she'll say, which one do you want? And which I'll say, this one. And I'll point to the one on the left. She goes, no, this one. Right? Like, she's like, she wants her preferences. It's what it's about for her.
Right.
Like, she wants to be able to be the one who chooses. And that's something that's so natural in all of us, that we want it to be our way.
Yeah.
But what preference is, the reason that a preference is a preference is that a preference is something you prefer, but it's not a principle.
Right.
It's one thing to have a principle matter. It's like, hey man, don't fly that plane off a cliff. It's going to crash.
Right.
A preference is a blue plane versus red plane. They both fly. You like that one. I like this one. And preferences is deciding, like, man, I don't have to have blue. It's okay if I get red.
Yeah, and understand that whenever you always have to lead with your preferences, you're sacrificing your ability to lead. Because
it's the only issues for me that I put my foot down with Lindsay on. The only time I'll put my foot down with Lindsay is on a principle matter.
Right.
And so, like, because I've done that, and I am this way with a lot of people, like you've experienced this a lot with me and Mighty Men, where a lot of, like, as a leader, I have a ton of preferences. I know what I like and I know what works.
Right.
And sometimes you guys will say, well, I want to do it this way. And I have to really pause and think about it for a second. Sometimes be like, all right, you guys are doing, I know I don't like what you're saying, but it's preference. And I see the principle in what you're doing, and I'm not going to be the one to do it for you. You need to do it. So if it's your preferences and you're going to do it, and I think you're going to do it by principles, go ahead, even though I don't like what your plan is.
Yeah. And what you said is a more developed thought. I think what this looks like a lot of times with, let's say, like in parenting, and I'm using a marriage example as well. In parenting, a lot of times your kids will ask you to do something, and you'll just say no. And why are you saying no? Is it because it's just something that's going to be inconvenient for you?
Yeah.
What I've told my kids is I was like, me and my wife are in 100% agreement about this. We will not parent our kids based on preferences. So what this looked like, my daughter came to me and was like, I want to get a bunny. I can tell you there's no part of me that wanted to get a bunny. I'm like, we got enough animals in this house. I don't want to have to pay for it. I don't want to have to clean up after. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And at first I was like, babe, we don't need another animal. But here's the principle, is faithful over little, ruler over much.
Yeah, that's good.
She has been so good with every pet we've had. She feeds them, looks after them, proactively takes care of them. We never have to say, hey, did you do this? And she's like, oh, whoops, I forgot. And so I sat there and I thought about the rabbit, and I said to her, hey, you've been so good about this. I don't want a rabbit, but I can't tell you that if you're faithful over little, you'll be rule over much, and then say no here. So guess who has a rabbit?
Good.
My daughter.
That's good. No.
I don't want her to have the rabbit. It's a pain.
I get that for sure. It's the great place to try and teach stewardship to your kids, though, is in the areas that they're passionate about.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. If I make it, the thing is never about the thing, but everything's about everything, as our man, Pastor Keith Kraft says.
Got to get a gong in at least once per episode.
And I just, so it's like, I always look at that as like a teaching episode in your marriage, what this looks like. So if you've never done Kendall Life Languages, I would highly suggest that you look at it and you take the test. I think it's like $50 or $70. It will tell you how you process information. Now, no surprise, I think I'm analytical first, then I do, and then I feel. I'm very low on empathy. And God in his wisdom gave me a woman who's very high on empathy. You know that I'm low on empathy. Yeah, that's why we get along.
Sometimes I have to help you with it.
Oh, not even sometimes. I was telling somebody about this today. I was like, people wouldn't guess this, but Garrett is a lot quicker to show warmth than I am when it comes to to issues. I'm like, well, that sucks to be you. Like, there you go.
Kill him.
Yeah. I'm just like, well, you should have done what you said, and you're going to go ahead and eat that turd sandwich, and I'm just going to watch you because you deserve it.
Yeah.
Garrett's a lot more merciful naturally, which I don't think people would pick that up, but it's the truth.
I am naturally merciful, but I have learned through fire and blood how important standards are.
Right.
So people see that part, because I show up with a hard level of standard. I have a hard level of standard for myself, but then it's again, you got to have both.
Yeah. So in marriage though, like understanding that I don't have a lot of empathy and I don't use a lot of feeling in the way I process communication or information. So like if someone's telling me, I'm not going like, does this person care about me? Like, I wonder how they're feeling. I don't ask that. I'm like, what's the point? Like, why are you doing this communication? To what end? I'm very analytical. That's like the drive of my communication. I know this now. If I didn't know this, and where I think a lot of marriages fall down, is men will say things like you need to do this, and they're talking to their wife, and it's like, no, you need to listen. Well, hang on a minute. You could be saying all the right things, but if your wife leads with her feelings, which a lot of women are more responders. That's the kind of life language term, but I would say are more empathetic. That you can't just come at them and hammer them with logic and be like, you need this. Even if you're right, if you're communicating in a way that's not moving them to want to do it, which is truly great leadership, guess who's wrong? You are. And I think this is where you have to sacrifice your preferences in communication. So what this looks like for me is I know that my wife's going to feel first. So like I have to be wise. If there's a conversation we need to have about something that if I'm leading my wife on something, if we're having a conversation where I'm going to have to say, hey, this is what's happening and this is what needs to happen. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to find her in a time whenever she's calm, she's rested, and we're going to sit down. We're going to have the conversation. I'm not going to do it when she's hot and she's
timing's a big one.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it when she's already frustrated about something. And then I'm also going to understand. Guess what? When I first say this to her, she's not going to love it. It's going to make her feel bad. She's going to like whatever it's going to hit. The feelings are going to come first. And then she's probably going to say some things, or she's going to need some time to process. And then later on, whenever she's kind of had time to process it, now we can maybe move towards the resolution.
It's like when I told her that shepherd's pie was peasant food. I think I hit a nerve there.
You did hit a nerve there. She still hasn't forgiven you for that one. And shout out to all our UK people who know what that is. But the point I'm making is like so many men will just have a communication with their wife this needs to be said. Yeah, maybe it does, but there's timing and there's also delivery method. And if you think that it just needs to be said and she needs to listen, you're wrong.
It's the Christ, that's the God filter of don't tell people what they deserve to hear, tell them what they need to hear to grow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might be right.
Yep.
Maybe, sometimes be right with your wife. But even if you are right, the way that you're going to deliver it is more law-based than it's love-based.
Yeah, very good. All right, next up, G, and we did a whole episode on this, the limitations episode, identity.
Identity is really one of the most powerful things that you can ever have when you have a rock-solid identity. We spend a whole month on it in Mindset Mastery. It's one of the things we reference the most. Occasionally, we do a product called Ideal Self. It's really not even a product, just a program we put out for people to jump in occasionally. You should be following us on social media. If you're not, that's usually where you're going to hear about some of those things. Yeah. But identity is something that when you have it, you just show up as the best version of yourself in every place that you go. And our identity is based on a few things. It's your vision, your values, and your beliefs. We'll talk about beliefs here in a second. But when you have an identity that's based upon who you want to be, who you say that you are, it is one of it's a perfect example of what the world sells. It sells you something. The advertisement is not the actual product. Right. It's like those Temu products that you purchase it and the picture looks really great and then it shows up to your house and you're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
Right. That's the world's identity. The world will sell you an identity that looks like it's going to perform great, and the first time you take it out on the track, it falls apart.
Yeah.
And you've got to die to an old identity, and that's a death to what your vision was for your life. There's a death to your personal values, the things that you think are valuable, and there's a death to your beliefs, and you've got to transition into a God vision, into a Christ values. You got to transition into biblical beliefs. Then you will have an identity that will unlock every door for you.
Yeah, and it really translates to the story that you're telling yourself all the time. And if it's worldly, it's going to vary because you're going to feel good or bad about yourself based on what you possess, what people are saying about you, or what you've achieved, because those things change all the time. When your identity is rooted in God, it's based on who He is. And guess what? Here's the good news. He never changes. So what God says about you is eternal, it's never changing, and it's dependable. So when you're rooted there, it is an absolute game changer. Paul put it best, once again, our man, the Apostle Paul, in Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me. Now really think about that. Who loved me and gave Himself for me. What he's saying is his identity is 100% in response to who God is and what He did. who loved me and gave himself for me. When you're taking your cues from God, it's a way different game. And we did a whole episode, so we're not going to go any deeper because we could go forever just on identity. But I would really encourage you to go back and listen to that limitations episode on identity. Next up, G, and this is a doozy, is pride and ego. Man, how many times do we have to die that one? Hopefully.
Yeah, pride is we're gonna talk about these last two, both pride and really like beliefs in your personal philosophy. These are ones that start to transition from thinking also into your heart.
Yeah.
Because pride is both a thought issue and a heart issue. Pride is the reason that Lucifer fell from heaven, because when he started, this is the most dangerous statement that you can begin to make is, when's it going to be all about me?
Yeah.
When's it going to be my turn? You start having like where you become the center of your world. You become the center of the universe. This is Lucifer seated at the right hand, like he's one of the most essential angels in heaven, given one of the greatest places of honor, but it wasn't good enough for him, right? And this is where you hear me talk about all the time. One of the things Nick and I say is like, I'm honored to play my part.
Yeah.
That is a cure for pride.
Right.
Pride is, my part's not good enough. This is the part that I want. That is a dangerous thought, and it is a dangerous seed that gets into your heart that begins to corrupt every other part of you. That this isn't good enough for me. I want to play this part. I think I should be capable of this. True honor, true humility is to say, you know what, if this is what God has for me, then this is what I want, right? God, if this is your will, it's the heart that Christ had. Before he went to the cross, he says, Lord, I don't want this.
Yeah.
But if it's your will, let it be done. And if you'll have that thought, this is a death that Christ went through. Because truly, this is a perfect example of that. This is a death of sorts that Christ went through in the Garden of Gethsemane before he died on the cross, right? This is a death to his own will, right? God, if this is what you want, then that's what I'm willing to do, right? Everything up to that has been him living out the prophecy, has been living out scripture, displaying who the Messiah is. But this is one of the last things he gives up when it's one of the most significant moments for Christ's life. Right after this, he's taken by the Pharisees and beaten and judged and put on the cross. But right before that, he goes through the death of, God, if this is your will, let it be done. Right, and so pride is a death that we all have to go through. And similar to flesh, it's going to be one of those deaths that it'll keep coming back for you. However, with all of these, with your flesh, with your thought, with your heart, once you've begun to walk through some of these deaths, I would say it's akin to, well, I've never climbed this mountain, but I have climbed mountains before.
Right.
And so there might be some things on this mountain I've never seen before, but I've climbed many mountains. And this is also the biggest and the hardest mountain I've ever climbed. However, I've climbed mountains before. I think I know what I'm getting myself into. And so when you've begun this process in your life where you've had some flesh death, where you've had some thought death, where you've had some heart death, it begins to encourage you that, like, you know what, this will be harder than anything else I've done before, but also I know I can do it.
Yeah, that's so good, G. I have nothing to add there. I thought that was, yeah. But you talked about beliefs, though, and this was personal philosophy. And we don't have a sound effect for him, but our man Josh Kraft says it best. Like he always quotes his professor from college when he says, if your beliefs don't line up with Scripture, guess which one needs to change?
Yeah, throw out your beliefs.
Exactly.
Don't throw out Scripture. And we have a definition for beliefs on this podcast. Beliefs are the things you know are true but can't prove. And so there's a part of a belief that will be somewhat based upon evidence. I can tell you I have evidence for who God is in my life. I know what he's done in my life. I've watched him do things in other people's life. I don't really need faith at this point in my life to believe God is real.
Right.
That doesn't require faith. I've seen too much.
Right.
It doesn't require faith. Now, for some people, when you first begin to follow God, or even before, and God's leading your heart into it, like it requires faith. Like, well, I'm going to try this church thing. I'm going to try the Mighty Men thing. I'm going to read my Bible. I don't know. I don't feel like God's ever spoken to me before. That's the beginning of faith. But then you'll come to a place where it's like, man, I don't need faith for that, but I do need faith for this. And there's a lot of things in my life I feel like I still need faith for. And it's a growth process that we're going through in developing our beliefs. And so beliefs are the things you know are true, but can't prove. And this is both a thought issue and a heart issue. Here's why. Beliefs have data in them, right? And this is where beliefs and data can seem like they're opposed, like they're different things, right? A belief is based upon faith. Data is like, well, I'll trust it when I see it.
Yeah.
Show me the scientific report, and then I'll follow it. But here's the thing, we see this in science all the time as well. You will see scientific study that is influenced by scientists' desires.
Yes, big time.
Right? The scientists are looking for something and they'll present the data for it. And that's why belief is both a thought and a heart issue. That when I have a heart that's for God, then I'm going to find the evidence that supports it.
Correct.
But if I don't have a heart for God, I can develop some really wrong beliefs. And so this is one of the most difficult deaths to go through, is letting go of some old beliefs that you've had. And one of the things, there's a speech that I give, a keynote that I go through talking about beliefs, and I use Pastor Keith's powerful phrase where I say, well, I just told you what my beliefs are and how they're working for me. Let me ask you your beliefs. How are they working for you?
Yeah.
Because if you're struggling in your life, if you're not where you want to be, which is probably the reason you're listening to this podcast, God spoke into your heart. You want more for your life. You believe you're capable of more. And so I would ask you to be willing to let go of some of the beliefs that you have, because maybe they're keeping you from moving on to the next place that God has for you. Some of the powerful beliefs that God has given me, I will bet my life on this, that God has a great plan for my life. And so even when I go through terrible things, I say, you know what? This must be a part of God's plan. I don't need to see it. I don't need God to prove it to me. I'm going to act as if I know this is a great plan. That is a belief that I have to stand on, not something I state that I believe, not something I think about, but all of my decisions act in accordance with the things that are happening to me are good.
Yeah, I love that, man. You'll die that death, because I think if you said to people, hey, list your beliefs, right? You know what I mean? But we all have them, and they come out in little sayings.
Yeah, you don't always know what they are,
No.
but you do act, you live and act in accordance with them.
100%. The people who say they're believers, but they don't go to church, they don't do anything. I'm like, no, you're not. Like the term believer of you believe the Bible, you believe something, but it's not the Bible. Like we separate belief and action, and they're not. Your actions reveal your beliefs. So you can say what you want, but like your beliefs having to die their death will be in all the little statements that you do, in all the little actions, where you spend your money, where you spend your time, like how you speak about other people. They just come out like that. And I think if you had ChatGPT listen to you all day, and there are AI devices that you can wear now that summarize your day. You just have them on all the time. And you said, hey, what are my beliefs based on the way I talk? I'd be really curious to see what it would come out with.
That is interesting.
But I bet you could do that, because it would. But I don't think you could do that yourself. Like if you said, hey, self-analyze your beliefs, most people would be like, I don't know.
Yeah, give me your recording and let me pick it apart.
Yeah, well, that'd be fun. Garrett, yeah, that'd be a really expensive service. Garrett's going to listen to your whole day and tell you what you believe. Brace yourself. All right, let's keep diving into heart, G. And this is one we've talked about, but like your dreams, man, that's a tough one. But you talk about the need to put your dreams on the altar. And it's that statement of...
Man, if there's one death here that I could say, like, pay attention, it's this one.
Right.
Because who is such a great model in Scripture besides Jesus is David.
Yeah.
And it's not that Jesus wasn't a man, but I think it might be a little... Like, Jesus is the ultimate, he's who we're modeling after, and he's perfect, and it's hard to be like that.
Yeah.
Right? And I would rather be like Jesus than David, but there's so many lessons that I can learn from David, and he is like the messianic figure in the Old Testament, because it says that he is a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
And so when I look at David's life, there's so many lessons that I'm trying to learn from that. And what David is such a great example of, you read it all through Psalms of where his heart was, you see it. And we were just talking about this, and where Psalms talks about his heart, where his journal entry after the issue with Bathsheba. And my favorite example of David's heart is, we've talked about this from before in Giant Killers, is what David says in 1 Samuel 17, right before he's about to kill Goliath. It's truly it's why you do what you do. It's the test of what's in your heart, because what God cares most about is not what you do, but why you do what you do. And I think it's one of the most awesome lines in Scripture. Right before David kills Goliath, he says, "I will kill you, and the whole world will know that there's a God." Yeah, that's why he did it. He didn't come out there because right before that, his brothers said, "What are you doing here, Pipsqueak? Like, you don't belong on the battlefield." He could have said, "I will kill Goliath and become, I will ascend beyond my family. I'll prove my brothers that they're wrong. I'll be the greatest of my name." He didn't say that. Right before he went out to face Goliath, Saul said, "Whoever could kill this guy won't pay any taxes. I'll pay you, and you can marry my daughter." And Scripture says that Saul was handsome, so you can assume his daughter was beautiful. David could have said, "Well, I'm going to kill Goliath and marry the princess. I'm going to kill Goliath and be rich. I'm going to kill Goliath and not pay any taxes. I'm going to kill Goliath and get all the glory." None of those he said. He said, "I will kill Goliath, and the whole world will know that there's a God. And it says that David was a man after God's own heart. And so for each and every single one of us, like that's what we should say is like, man, God, how do I want to be like that. I want to have a heart for you. And that means we've got to take some of our personal dreams. We've got to take some of our personal desires and take them to the altar before God and say, God, your way and not mine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I've got to do this. Like I have a lot of ambition in my life. And so this is a very reoccurring practice in my life that I go before the Lord and say, God, this is what I want. And if you don't want it, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Because my ambition would ruin me if I was not someone who continually renewed myself before the Lord.
And that statement of if you don't want it, I don't want it. That is your dreams and will on the altar when you really mean that. Now, these last three in your heart are kind of grouped together, and you touched on them so perfect, and we're going to stick with the example of David. Your worries, your worship, and your values. And the reason I'm lumping these three in is, as heart desires that you need to die death to, what this looks like, man, so oftentimes, when we've touched on it earlier in the podcast, you'll be like, man, but God, if you could just take care of this first, right? Like, but God, I need to make a certain amount of, but God, I need this with my wife, but God, I need this with, and if there's something in you that's preventing you, that's a blockage in your relationship with God from being able to commune with him, from being able to believe that he's good, from being able to be obedient and to truly do his will, what that tells you is that you are worshiping something ahead of God. And that's a big statement, but it's true. If you can't have peace and rest with God until your finances are in a certain way, you're worshiping money. Like you've got it ahead of you. If you can, and the same thing would go for your wife, your kids, like things that we would say are really good.
It's a need. God, I'll serve you if you'll just take care of my family.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And so in your worship, that you would worship God regardless of what's happening because you know that he's good and he's rightfully in his right place as king in your life. And that's also going to reveal your values, because what I find is as you get closer to God and you follow after him more and you know him, you value what he values. And you start to care about what he cares about, because naturally we all care about a bunch of things that are not eternal, right?
What's funny in the way that we bargain is like we talk to God as if like, God, I'd let you make me do this if you'd give me this thing, right? Which is kind of silly when you're talking to the creator of the universe. It's like, hey man, I don't need your permission to make you do anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's like us saying like, well, God, I'll follow you into the desert if you give me certainty that you'll provide for me. And God's saying, dude, if I wanted you in the desert, you'd be in the desert. I'm asking you to follow me into the desert without the plan, without assurance, because then you'll see who I am.
Right.
God's saying, follow me and I'll provide for you. God's not saying, well, let me give you assurance that I'll provide for you and then you'll follow me. God's not trying to convince us of anything. He wants to show us who he is. And so he says, the only way this works is if you say, I'll follow you. That's it. I'll follow you.
Yeah.
And God says, look, if you follow me, then you'll see it. But it doesn't work the other way around.
Right. And here's the good news. You can have faith in God's character, because one of the things I love is in 2 Samuel 8:11, King David's starting to get a bunch of victories, and he's beating he's beating the Philistines, he's beating the Moabites, you name it, he's beating them. And he realizes that God is with him, and that's why he's winning. And so everywhere he goes, it says, this is 2 Samuel 8 and verse 7, David took the gold shields that belonged to the officers of Hadadezar, that's somebody he just defeated, and brought them to Jerusalem. And he talks about all the people he defeated and how he brought things back. And then in verse 11, listen to this, King David dedicated these articles to the Lord as he had done with the silver and gold from all the nations he had subdued. What is that? That's a man who knows where his victory came from, knows why his life is going the way it's going, and has a heart for what God cares about. And what's amazing is the same stuff he dedicated was the stuff that Solomon used to build the temple later on.
It's true wisdom and fear of the Lord. David appeared, and that's what Scripture says, right? The beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord.
Yep.
David appears as wise there. Why? Because he's truly afraid of the Lord, because he saw what God did to Saul.
Yeah.
This guy didn't listen to me. He was disobedient. He was more for himself than he was for me, and I took it all away.
Yeah.
And what David knows is like, man, I that's obviously the path to failure. God, your way. I want to follow you. I'm going to listen to you. I know this is all yours. Because what David knows is as soon as he starts thinking it's his, God will take it all away.
Yeah. And in the faith in God's nature is you can know that, guess what? He has bigger plans and better things for you than you could ever dream up yourself.
Yeah.
And like you said recently, God doesn't promise you happiness, but you can guarantee that when you're following after him, you'll never feel emptiness.
That's right.
And I love that. So I hope that those are just some of the deaths. I hope you realize from this episode that there are many deaths you have to die. But like we said, there's a resurrection. We didn't go into all the goodness that lays for you on the other side, but it is so worth it, man. These deaths are by design, And when you are living life according to the Spirit, it is the greatest life you could ever hope to have.